Hello and welcome to my latest video. So this time we're going to be taking a look at another 55 to 60 vintage penguin books, giving them the cleanup and the once over and adding them back into my collection. Now, these particular penguins really haven't had any sort of cleaning for a long time, I mean, decades really. And on the whole, some of them, well, as we'll see when we go through, some of them won't be too bad with regards internally. So it's got some very faint pencil marks on this one, so let's just see if we can raise those off. I use a very soft rubber here, the Pentel one, but mainly look at the top. I mean, that is really dusty, so that's where I think we'll be making the most difference today. Now, one thing that is really good is we've got lots of crime titles to look at, and the penguin crime ones are in these the green livery, the green colours. This is an absolute favourite of mine, Hound of the Baskervilles. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. I think it's just going to be the top edge on that. On quite a few of these, that'll need a polish. Now, this is interesting. This has got the bottom of the spine there is going to need a slither of glue in there. So we'll do that in a sec. So what I'm doing, I'm just going through the books initially, checking there's no pages turned over and or any writing or old bookseller prices inside. And then on this one actually needs a bit of spine repaired, so I'm just going to put a slither of glue into that. So I recently treated myself to a new thing of Pritt Stick. Here we are, and its first job is cleaning, or gluing rather, Penguin 112. Now these really are some of the earliest penguins ever produced, and although I'll double check the date in a minute, I believe these are 1935 stroke early 1936 date wise. That's been a little stubborn, it's not staying in very well. Put a little bit more in there. The thing is, the glue underneath the actual paper here of the spine, the original glue that is from the 30s, has got all stiff and hard. It's really solid, so my Pritt Stick doesn't adhere to it very well. But I think that'll be enough, so squeeze it in and push that down. And that's actually tightened that up. And just so we were looking date-wise, because these are all first Penguin editions, 1937, actually slightly later than I thought. So Penguin themselves started to be published in July 1935, and generally about 10 per month were released. This is a cerise travel one. Some of these travel ones are absolutely fantastic. It's like a time machine back into another world. Now this one's got that tiny little bit up there on the top of the spine. I'm going to get that glued in as well. It's just where historically it's got nicked. One thing you do see with this particular batch is because they are from 1937, although there's the rumblings of war, there's absolutely no sign of any sort of paper rationing or anything like that happening just yet. So because of that, the books themselves are still very robust. They're very well made, these Penguin books, and generally speaking are in they've survived in better condition than say other books of which came a few years later, these pre-war ones. This is number 114. This is a two-parter, so it's Fock Man of Orleans 1 and Man of Orleans 2. And if you look at the spines here, you see they've got a similar sort of age of they've aged very similarly. So that means that almost certainly these were bought at the same time, and they've been kept together as an original pair because of the way that they've aged together. Sometimes you'll see two books, like a two-parter, and one might be perfect and the other one really grubby. And it's because they've come from a different source, and then they've just been paired together. Those are absolutely, well, I'd say virtually mint and unread. So they're all right. So I think what we'll do with this little lot then, we're going to give them a brush. Now, historically, I've been using my a little toothbrush to do these. However, just lately I've been using, actually that top of the spine needs a bit of glue. Lately I've been using this one, which is, in actual fact, it's a shoe brush. It was designed for when you put the polish on your shoes and you rub the actual polish in. This is like the buffing brush rather. So it's like to bring out the shine on the on your shoes. And I've been having, because I've been doing a lot more cleaning lately, and I've been cleaning, you could almost say in bulk. For that reason, I've been using this one here. And I've had it for years, but they're not exactly difficult to find. But it stood me in really good stead, and I've been enjoying the efficiency of cleaning with this brush. Now, like all of these, it's the top edge, which is, I'm hoping to lighten up, particularly that top one there. So that's definitely lighter than what it was. It hasn't got it all off. I almost feel I'd need to be there for about 5 minutes to do it, but almost certainly, and don't forget, considering the time that this book was on the shelf, when it was brand new, it was the time of open coal fires in people's homes. I wouldn't say this suffered from cigarette staining in any way, but definitely it looked like there was soot on the top, and I think that's possibly what's caused that particular one to go quite as black as it has. Lovely. Well, that's the first few done. And slip them over there. And so we've actually got one in a dust wrapper, number 116. It's not a great dust wrapper, but it's no worse than any others. It's actually got a bit of Tipex on the front. That's probably done in the 80s, I reckon. But what I'll do, I'll slide the dust wrapper off. It's quite fragile. And underneath, we've got a relatively clean copy of this one. One of the yellow ones were published as like miscellaneous titles. And that one's got the remnants of a dealer's price in there, or some sort of description. Probably came from a dealer early on when I was starting to collect penguins back in the 80s. Apart from that, it's all right. Now, because it's in a wrapper, I'm going to give the edges the brush now before I push it back into its delicate wrapper. And the thing is with these early penguins, quite a lot of them these days, you know, sort of 80 plus years later, the actual titles being published, they're like, who are some of these authors? Who are, you know, are they anyone that you're likely to read again? And in a lot of cases you're not. But the ones which are still relevant today, people like Agatha Christie, for example, they've ended up proving to be extremely collectible because they're books that are relevant today and still being enjoyed and read, like Agatha Christie, who's actually, in fact, had a massive revival during the pandemic as people were stuck at home. They've turned to reading books that they know they're going to enjoy, you know. And those ones have ended up proving to be quite collectible. And of course, a lot of these early ones were published as penguins. So 117 here, and this isn't in a wrapper. 7 famous one-act plays. So get a little bit of pencil to rub out a pen. Yeah, it's the red cover. So we're seeing virtually the full spectrum of penguin colours just in the first few books. One thing that you will notice today is that we've got lots of crime, which I'm very pleased about. I love classic penguin crime. It can't be beaten, can it? This one's got an 8 at the back, inside back cover. I don't know where that's come from. But easily dispatched. The rest of it's okay. This was a favourite of mine because I'm a big snooker fan. I used to play quite a bit, not so much anymore, but yeah, billiards and snooker for amateur players. One of my favourites. I do actually enjoy old books on snooker. I think they're brilliant. There's not that many on snooker. They're predominantly billiards, which was much more popular back then, unlike today. But yeah, I've met all the I've met lots of the classic players when snooker got big in the 70s and 80s. They would do touring and tours of the UK, and where I live still has got quite a few snooker clubs, so they would come down and do exhibitions. Remember when I had my shop, which, as well as doing books and comics, also sold records, and Steve Davis was down doing a tournament locally, and he came in the shop and bought a load of singles because he collects Northern Soul and Tamla Motown stuff. Loved it. Had a little chat with him. It was brilliant. And in actual fact, one of the chaps I work with at the moment, he is an ex-professional snooker player. He got up to as far as 140th in the world. So I don't think I'll be asking him for a game. That one's absolutely fine. Nice to have it in a pretty nice wrapper. That was Penguin Parade. So they published number 1 as Penguin Main Series 120. Then it went on and had a couple of series, sort of a couple of numbered series. Now this one's a two-parter again, Lean Men 1 and Lean Men 2. Now because the actual books here, you can see Lean Men 1 is in much better condition than Lean Men 2. Almost certainly these have not been bought together. They've been bought separately. And I've just sort of paired them up in my collection. Unlike that one we saw earlier. Now this has got some initials and a date in the 70s, so I'm going to carefully rub that out if I can. Yeah, it's pencil. It's in a very, very awkward place. There's an original owner signature from 1940. Don't mind those if they're in pen, because it's nice because they're put in like historical context, aren't they? That's the first one there. The second one, yeah, definitely got some wear on it. Hasn't got that signature in the inside back cover, so yeah, this is definitely come from a different source. 1938 it says. Got a few turned over pages, so we're going to sort those out. Some on the back as well. Need a little turning over. There we are. Do another one. Soldier's Pay. This one's a little bit worn, but it's okay. Pages are quite brittle on this one. And you do find that sometimes if a book's been stored in a particularly hot environment, it can cause the pages to go brittle. something in the bottom of that one there. Definitely benefiting from a few flick throughs here. Bits and pieces dropping out of it, like bits of dust and dirt. Yeah. I think that's probably been re-glued at some point, but not by me. It's quite a, I mean, it's all there. It's a solid enough copy. It's just not great, shall we say. This is a nice one. It's actually in a wrapper as well. John Dixon Cars. It's a wrappered crime title, so we can't complain with that. Very nice underneath. Let's give it the old ones through. Oh, yeah, right for profit. Yeah, apart from a little page edge browning, that's particularly nice. It's got a 1285 right down the bottom here. I wonder if that's showing that someone picked this one up in, say, December 85, maybe. Some people would do that, wouldn't they? They'd make a little note of when they picked up a book, put it in an obscure spot. And 35 years later, someone like me comes along and pulls it, rubs it out. So let's give these 8 a brush now. All right, look at that, look how dark they are. There we are, made quite a difference that straight off, didn't it? Same again on these. There's only one that shows that looks really, really bad. It's that one there, third one down. Oh yeah, a little plume of dust came off that then. Yeah, that's made quite a difference to that one. However, I think that William Faulkner, we suspected it's been re-glued. By doing that top, I need to put a little bit of glue back on that top edge. I've accidentally nicked it slightly. It was already there, but I would like to sort of bend that back into place. If I can get some glue to go on the end of this screwdriver here. You have to sort of put it into the trenches of this spine here, but I think that's got that gluey enough. And that should stick down okay now. There we are. Lovely. Okay. So they're all in order? Yeah. So let me just pull the camera back out, but that's the first sort of stack done. Okay, so 1, 2, 5. An Indian Day. This has got a couple of turned over pages straight off the bat here. It's quite foxed inside there, and there's unfortunately nothing I can do about that. Once the book's sort of aged like that, that's really beyond repair. Inside front cover as well. So in a funny sort of way, because this one is a bit borderline and it's not particularly difficult to get hold of, I will actually try and get like an upgraded copy of that. So what I do when I go back over these videos and I'm editing them, I've got my wants list up in front of me, or next to me rather, and I can add a few books that I've got, but they're just on my upgrade list. These early ones I got many, many years ago, and in a lot of cases, once I got them, I just sort of forgot about them. I thought, well, yeah, I've got that number now. I don't need to go back and get it. In actual fact, it would have been quite nice to have got a better copy at the time and just been a little bit more patient. Obviously, times have very much changed now, and a lot of vintage Penguins, even non-crime ones, go for good money these days. That one's got a little old, looks like £6 inside. Very, very faint bookseller's mark, which I have safely removed. A biography now, Lord of Arabia. That's lovely. Now this is another double, the weekend book. So it's number 129 and 130. Now once again, these are in almost, they're not similar conditions at all. They're very, very different, and almost certainly these came from different sources. But let's do book number 1 first of all. Yeah, just incredibly foxed. What's that at the back there? Williams Bookstores in Shanghai. Wowee, it's come from Shanghai. So it was obviously exported out there back in the day. It's lovely when you see stuff like that, you think, wow, what a history. 1938, this is dated. It's come from all the way from Shanghai. You have to think, well, how did it end up back in the UK? How did it get out there, be sold out there, and then maybe someone English speaking bought it out there, and it eventually came back to the UK. 10-minute alibi. This is one of the more common crime ones. It seems to crop up quite a bit. Not really sure why, but it turns up quite a lot. Nice copy. These are all pretty nice. This one's lovely. It's almost mint, and this almost certainly means I've got this one. I've got a wrapper for this one in my bag of wrappers, and I've just taken it off because the wrapper was maybe not looking so good. But underneath, it's left a virtually brand new condition vintage Penguin. Look at the state of it. It's a beauty, isn't it? Just dust along the top, and we can sort that out. And in fact, we'll do that. This pile here right now. So try and do them 4 at a time. Lovely little plumes of dust coming off these. Lovely. Oh, it's a joy to go through these after, so long. I honestly, apart from a few years back when I started filming the collection for my regular YouTube channel, my main one, which if you haven't seen it's over at Jules Burt Collections and Unboxings. To go through these sort of intimately and clean them up is a real joy, and it's great. Look at the bottoms there. All of them are pretty dark, aren't they? So let's hope that the shoe brush does its job. Certainly seems to be. Well, they were particularly dark, but looking much lighter now. I'd say not perfect. I mean, they almost need like an extra bit on the end here, but certainly miles better than what they were, which is why we're doing this. Created a bit of a mess there, haven't we? When I do one of these videos, I have to spend the next sort of 10 minutes vacuuming. 133 Watkins Last Expedition. This is a lovely title in a wrapper by the looks of it. Yeah, there's no sort of little dust in there, but look at the great condition of that now. Even though it's been in a wrapper, a little bit of like aging has crept in on the edge of the spine there, but can't do anything about that. Apart from that, it looks an absolute beauty. Yeah, look at that. It's got someone's very neat name inside. Look at that. H.O.F. Robbins, Ordnance House, Marchwood, Southampton. And you could almost go to Google and look that guy up, couldn't you? You could see who was with that address at Ordnance House and see what that was all about. So if the mood takes me, when I edit this video, I might do that. Only because I'm reading a book at the moment called, what is it called? White Spines. It's by an author called Nicholas Royal. I'll pop a picture of it in the video now. And Nicholas collects vintage picador books from about 1972 when they started up to about 2010 at the latest. And he doesn't buy anything online. He picks all his books up in charity shops and places like that, market stalls. And when he comes across something like I've just done there with that chap's name, he does like to research them sometimes and see where the book potentially has come from. And I think that one looks so interesting. I think it warrants it. So I'll just put up a little thing about that on the screen if I can find anything. That's another one. Look at that. It's a beauty, isn't it? It doesn't seem underneath. It's like a tiny, like I'm touching it almost for the first time. And it's like a tiniest layer of dust. But that's where the dust wrapper has been. In this case, you can see, look, vintage. Look, it's had some very thin tape has been popped on it to protect the dust wrapper, but to keep it in one piece. But it's done its job, and that's really all that matters, isn't it? So. It's a little bit frayed, the wrapper, but nothing too bad. This is a bit of a classic, Vile Bodies, Evil in War. Title that's still very relevant today. Yeah, a nice copy of that. And this latest lot haven't needed a massive amount of work, really. J.J. Connington. And when I've pulled these down, I think this time around it's about 55 books, something like that. That, for me, fills one vintage comic box, 2 layers of it. So that's how I'm doing it. I'm going through the book and filling up a box of books. And then I'm coming in. So this one's got a cut corner, look at that. So I fill up a box of books and then come down. Who's that? Signature. Beverly Nichols, Self, 138. Got the flap of a dust wrapper there. Little autobiography in this case. Lovely. Another travel and adventure. And there are people who just collect these cerise ones, you know. There's a nice little advert there for Mansion Polish. They did a lot of advertising in vintage Penguin books. Not something that will continue past the war much, but during the war and leading up to it. This is one that is on my list still to get a decent copy of. It's Cold Comfort Farm. This copy's been grubby. It's the only one I've ever had. Maybe I've had one, but it was even worse than this, if you can believe it. So compared to some of the other ones, this one it's all there. It's just a very, very grubby old copy. Absolute classic book though, isn't it? And we've had a few of them today. So let's give these 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we've got 8 there. So we give these take 4 at a time and give these a clean off. So the tops on these don't seem too bad at all. So I don't think these are going to take much. Yeah, nothing too strenuous there. And they're all actually really quite nice copies, those, so that's good. And let's get this next 4. But Gold Comfort Farm, I'm going to make sure that is definitely on my list of titles to upgrade. So I think this will be the last video that I film which isn't in my dedicated studio. So thanks to the success of my other channel, I've been able to save up enough money to build a dedicated studio in the back garden. So that one's almost ready to rock and roll now. I'm just doing the very last bit of soundproofing, and I've got like a set which I'm working on building behind me. And ironically, the last sort of step of the process is to get a table and a chair so that I can be doing this. So that's the very last bit, but I had to do it all in meticulous order, and you'll be pleased to hear it's come together very, very well. And you may not even hear it much when I'm filming these videos, because this is a minter, isn't it? But that's lovely in a wrapper. So you may not really hear it in today's video, for example, but there is a little bit of background noise. So my wife is working from home today, and sounds like she's doing a Zoom meeting or something like that. I've got, the odd car driving by out the front. That is lovely. And there are certain things as I film this today. It's January, so it's a fairly cold time of year in the UK. So the heating pops on and off. I'm in earshot of the fridge, and that also pops on and off. So it can get noisy. Usually if the dog starts barking or something like that, there's a name to come out, I would generally pause the video and sort of just go back and reshoot that little bit. But basically, when I'm in my dedicated studio with all that soundproofing on every wall, I think things are going to be looking very, very different, and I think they'll be sounding different. So the sound should be crisper and richer, and I'll be able to use some different sorts of microphones to what I use at the moment to get a better sort of sound. And this is a vintage receipt, and what does this say? Thank you. £1 in total. It was £1 and 1.5 pence. Gateway Food Markets, 10th of December 1976. Love it. I love stuff like that. It's going straight back in the book. Absolutely love bits and pieces like that. Yeah, so back to that book by Nicholas Rawle. He recounts how he goes around some of these charity shops and he finds how he picks up these books. He knows pretty much what he's got, because I think there's only about 900 to 1,000 books maybe in the collection to get. So, and most of them he knows. I think he's photographed all the different covers. I don't think he's particularly mad about first editions. He just likes the different editions, and some books he's got multiple copies of. And he has a very interesting Instagram page which you might want to check out. I think it's quite a bit of fun. He's a writer himself, and he edits short story anthologies. That needs some glue, doesn't it? Or we're going to have to do a job on this. So yeah, I think he's one to you might want to check out. So let's see. The cover is almost completely come off. It's not looking great here for this one. I think it's probably best if I try and ease the whole thing off, possibly, if it will do it. It's in a sorry old state. The glue is just aged. Gosh, in a terrible state. It really is in a terrible state. I think I'm going to need my scalpel, so hold fire a moment. Okay, so I've got my scalpel. I'm going to try and do is just try and get into the, just try and break this glue up a bit. But it's so awful, it's a real difficult one. The book has already, I think, possibly been glued, you know. You know, I think it's been re-glued at some point, but not by me, but just sort of, just to give it a little bit more of a lease of life. It is in a terrible, terrible state. The bottom bit here actually isn't too bad. It's actually in place. And I think if I was to force it out, it might actually make it worse. So I think what we'll do, we'll just try and glue what's accessible. I get my little brush in there now and try and get any bits and pieces out of there. But this one is rough and it's going to go on my list of upgrades for sure. But for the time being, it's serving a purpose by being a copy in place here. So I'm just cleaning off my screwdriver here. So what I want to do is pop some glue down that edge there, and then hopefully it'll push it all together. But it ain't great, this, I gotta say. It's just going to be a job just to keep it, you know, from getting any worse, basically. But it's certainly not great. Thankfully, it's not a rare crime title or something like that, so it's one that's actually fairly reasonably priced. It only cost a few pounds to replace this one, I would imagine. But I'll put it on my list of ones to keep an eye out for. It's amazing, some of them, I mean, it's not like, you know, it's a particularly rare crime title. And with the Penguins nowadays, vintage Penguins, it is really those top titles. Something like this is really easy to get a hold of. But the top crime titles obviously fetch, you know, really good money nowadays. And if it's an author who's collected outside of being a Penguin, so say it was like an early Agatha Christie, even the Agatha Christie's in the that Penguin published in the 50s are, you know, really highly sought after these days, and have become collectibles. They're the ones which have sort of retained their value. Those ones in the 50s, and I suppose we'll get to them eventually, they are really nice because Christie herself did brand new introductions to the stories, and although the introductions are only a couple of pages of pop, they are really nice additions. And it was to sort of celebrate the anniversary of the crime club as well, Collins Crime Club. Back then, even though they were competitors, the publishers worked so much closely together. It was brilliant. It doesn't happen quite as much now. They just sort of tend to buy each other, don't they? Right, that's fully glued up, so that's just going to stop it getting any worse, to be honest. But it certainly ain't no pretty repair job. But yeah, I'll pop that on my my one to upgrade that, because it's definitely on its last legs. I mean, really, that was, as they say, had one foot in the grave. Having to do major surgery on it there. So, wow, okay, wasn't expecting that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do a couple more, and then we'll give these a bit of a brushing off. And then we've got about one stack left to go. Now, this one along the top here, is that in ink? I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, that's a shame. It's got a blooming great name in the front. This is not a great copy either. Still, it's okay. That's all right. The land that God gave Cain. It's considerably better than what we've been looking at. Right, give these a dust off then. See a few plumes of smoke coming off this little lot. Plumes of dust that looks like smoke. Yeah, that's done a good job on those. Pleased with them. Lovely. So I've pretty much got about 1.5 stacks of these to go, and we've got a real run. So Penguin published 10 crime on the trot, and we've got all of those to look at. So this is interesting. This is a cerise one again, a flying penguin, winged warfare. This is an RAF World War I memoir. A little bit of foxing on it, but nothing too bad. And Penguin were publishing these World War I memoirs because obviously World War II was just on the horizon, and some of them proved quite timely, such as there's a couple of books on prisoner of war escapes during the First World War, which proved very handy. Now, this one here, 151, is H.G. Wells' is The Invisible Man, one of my favourites, and it's so nice. That's the first edition. I've actually got a second edition as well of this one, just like a secondary reading copy, which is in beautiful condition with a wrapper as well. But this is just the reprint, which is this is the third. So that's the first, and that's the third. Najee Marsh, Enter a Murderer. I said they did a run of 10 crime titles. All of these are quite expensive to buy nowadays, so I'm hoping that my titles hold up. This is quite nice, it's in a dust wrapper. Poisoned Chocolates case. This is actually quite a scarce pan as well. Which Pan did this about 15 years after this edition. Okay, look at that underneath, it's very bright, vibrant, isn't it? Piccadilly Murder. House on Tollard Ridge, John Rode. He was another of those classic Collins authors who came over to Penguin rather, for a few titles in the 1930s, not many. This one's a bit worn. Look at this, 155, compared to the other ones. Yeah, it does let the side down a little bit, doesn't it? Look at this. Yes. But because it's a crime title, beggars cannot be choosers. And I was probably still over the moon to get this at the time I picked it up, you know. But it's not the greatest of titles. There's a few pages that I'm few corner creases I'm taking out here as we speak. Got an owner's mark on the front here and a date. So I'm using the other book because it's on the inside front cover. I'm using this other book to rest on. Just makes it easier to rub this out. It's a date from 1985, so nothing to do with the original owner of this from the 1930s. There we are. Okay, let's give these 8 a brushing off. Put them over there so we get a little bit more room. Lovely. Yeah, they really lightened up those ones. But yeah, Murder at Crumb House, that's going to go on my upgrade list, I think. Although it's a crime title, it's one I can improve, basically. So, starting pile number 4, just pull the camera out one final time. This is a nice one, 156, The Red House Mystery. It's by A. Milne, and yes, that is the same A. Milne of Winnie the Pooh fame. Actually wrote this crime title. Actually had a little bit of popularity. It got reprinted a decade ago. This is nice as well. Sax Romer. This is in a dust wrapper. This is a Fu Manchu. Looks like the dust wrapper's got some writing on it. So what's this on the dust wrapper? Oh, blimey. The thing is, although that's in pencil, that dust wrapper is so fragile, I'm not going to rub it out. I just don't think it's worth risking damaging the dust wrapper. But that is quite severe. Who would have left that? Who would have done that, rather, you know? John Dixon Carr again, Waxworks Murder, 158. There's another one there, look. 25th of the 681 duplicate. I wonder whose handwriting that is. I wonder where this has come from. But someone had 2 copies. Well, I mean, it's a bit greedy, isn't it? But thankfully, I'm able to take it off their hands. Get rid of their offending pencil marks. Dangersfield Talisman. J.J. Collington, another one of those classic sort of golden age crime writers. It's the last of that run of 10 crime titles. Obelisks at Sea. C. Daly King. On the whole, these have been much better than... It's not been too bad. There's just been 1 or 2 turkeys in this particular batch, hasn't there, that have been that warranted a lot more work than I would have liked. This looks pretty nice though. North to the Orient, another one that's really, really bright, but you can see that little layer of dust when a book's been in a dust wrapper for this time, all these years. That's, well, you could say that's almost like, is it mint on red? I'd say it probably is. This is interesting that some of the pink has come off, the cerise ink has come off on the inside of the dust wrapper. I don't think you see that very often, you know. First normal fiction one in a while. This one feels a little dusty on the covers as well. I think it's just the way they've been printed, you know. Slightly misbound, that one, miscut, so we'll just leave that as is. Once again, a pretty nice copy of that one. Okay, so let's give these I think the Red House Mystery is actually going to need this bit there just glued in. So I'm just going to do that, a little quick running repair on that one. You can see where it's come away. Just going to squish that bit of Pritt stick in there, like so. Just to stop it getting any worse. I'd much rather that edge was, there we are, nice and flat than any other way. Okay, so now we're ready to give these the brush. These weren't too bad dirt-wise on the top edges here. Yeah, I think that's done all right on those. I've got the last 4 now to do for today's video. So we've got Charlton, an autobiography in the blue. Nothing wrong with that. Next we've got a double, which is Queer Street in 2 volumes, but these I believe look to be from the same owner. They're both in dust wrapper, which is a good sign. Just get any dust that may have accumulated under the dust wrapper in there. Yeah, that seems all right. A little bit of foxing, but don't mind that. So with books this age, sometimes, particularly paperbacks, you just have to learn to accept sometimes that they're not all going to be pristine. I mean, it is as simple as that. Here's book 2, almost certainly the same person, but you never know. Yeah, it's all right, isn't it? Just that little, for a book that's been in a wrapper, it just collects the tiniest like little layer of dust inside. Just a touch. There we are. And then this one here, 166, the Centaur, Algernon Blackwood, another one in a dust wrapper. This one doesn't seem to have been read at all. A little aged, but not bad. 1938. So all these books we've been looking at today have been like 1937, 1938, haven't they? So that little period in Penguin's history, pre-war. The books are still lovely to look at, but they're also starting to publish books, like those travel ones, for example. They're starting to publish books which are, in actual fact, war-related, but books on the First World War. Because I guess a certain amount of time had passed, and the time was just right to get those published. But there you go. I think they look particularly good now, so I'm very, very pleased with that, and I hope you've enjoyed watching me clean these up. And as I said, next time I reckon we're going to be in my my studio, which I shall give you a little tour of if that is the case. Thank you very much for watching today. Do hit the subscribe button if you've not already for regular vintage book cleaning videos. A new video every single Saturday, and I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.